Yes, thank you very much. In Norway, we have this saying, to jump after Wirkola. Wirkola was a very famous Norwegian ski jumper, and to jump after him was never fun. And this is a little bit of the feeling that I have today, that I'm jumping after Wirkola and 3 of them at the same time. But it's a great honor to be here, and I'm very happy that I was asked to come here and talk about this very, very important subject. And I also feel that the judges get a little of the blame on what is not really working with these cases. I guess one of the reasons why I'm here is because some of you have heard about what the press called the tsunami of rapes in the streets of Oslo. It has been focused in the press that there has been an increase in assaulted rape, like rape of an unknown man out in the streets. And that has also put kind of emphasis on these cases again in Norway. Just to give you some numbers, the technique failed me, so I don't have this PowerPoint presentation, so I will not give you many numbers. It's hard to remember and hard to understand, but I will give you the last year's numbers when it comes to how many reported rapes there were in Norway in total. And that was 1,217. 1,064 out of this were like rape, classic rape. 13 were gross negligent rape, which we also have, and 140 were attempted rapes. This was in 2011, and it's a little higher than it was in 2010. I don't have how many convictions we had in 2010, but in 2011, but in 2010 we had 156 convictions and 44 acquittals. So I think we are on the same level as Sweden. It looked for me on the previous presentation. And in Norway, as everywhere else, the police states that there is a large number of rapes and sexual assaults that are not reported. If you look at these assaulted rapes that we have had in Oslo lately, in 2011 it was 53, and that is like the street rape. And that is half of the whole number in Norway, and it's 500,000 people or 600,000 people living in Oslo, so it's quite a large number for Oslo. I'm not going to analyze why and who, because that's not my field of expertise. So I just go over to what I really want to talk about, and that is how rape is handled in our courts and the increased focus on the victim. In our criminal code divide rape in kind of 3 categories and some subcategories too, but if we take it like 3 main categories, it's rape, it's gross negligent rape, and attempted rape. Gross negligent rape was actually introduced by a very, what shall I say, highly recommended and highly respected criminal law professor in '87, when he said that it's a little bit of this, she says no, but she means yes. And he said we need to have it in the law that you can actually also be negligent when it comes to how do you interpret the consent. So from about 2000 we got that in our penal code, and it has been tried from several, what shall I say, law experts to get rid of it later, but they haven't succeeded, so that will probably still be there. In 2008, March 2008, we got a new Chapter 8 in our penal code, or criminal procedure code, and the thing was we needed to strengthen the victim's rights during the court proceedings and also during investigation. These rights were not only victim of rape or sexual assaults, but all kind of victims from violence. And the rules can be summed up as followed, or the changes. First, there is a right to a lawyer or legal counsel paid by the state. And this summer there were made a pool of lawyers that want to actually do these cases. So they have to apply, and they were chosen. So this is good lawyers, that we have a pool in each city of lawyers that will take this kind of cases. There is a right for the victim to consult a lawyer to decide if she or him wants to press charges. And this also is free of charge. So this is actually before the case is reported even. It's the right for the victim and the victim's lawyer to be informed by the police during the investigation. That means given, to be able to look into the evidence, and also to be able to press, to speed up the investigation. The victim and the victim's lawyer will have the right to suggest additional evidence, like witnesses or whatever. And if the police denies, there is the right to take this denial to court. If there is any questions about about the court proceedings, for instance, should the defendant leave the courtroom when the victim gave her statement, these kind of questions should, as good as possible, be made before the court proceeding starts. There is a right for the victim and the victim's lawyer to be present during the trial at all times, also before the victim gave her testimony. And they also changed it so, as a general rule, the victim will give her testimony before the defendant. But that is only in these cases with violence that you have that. The victim's lawyer will have the right to ask questions to the defendant, not only about torts, which we also have, but any kind of a question, and the same right for witnesses and experts. There is a right also for the victim and the victim's lawyer to comment on the defendant's and other victims' testimonies, and also other presented evidence, and to give a final statement to the court, as the defendant can do. The victim can also do that. A final statement to the court before the court proceedings is adjourned. The victim will be refunded expenses with attending the trial. For instance, loss, if she loses some money from work or whatever, that will be refunded to her or him. The victim has the right to be informed of the verdict. They cannot appeal. They have also the right, after the verdict, to be informed if the perpetrator is released from prison, either on a leave or when he is released for good. And the victim has the right to have the civil case, the tort case, tried together with the criminal case. So it's like the civil case inside the criminal case that we have had for a long time. So that is not really a change, but it makes it a lot easier for the victim to have everything done in the same trial. I was going to say something about children as victims, but I realized yesterday that we actually have stolen your concept, so I'm not going to say anything about that. When I listened to your prosecutor here, I realized that we can do a lot of things with this, but when it comes to the penalty, the punishment, it seems like what shall I say, the courts are, dragging its heels. And we did that for a long time in Norway too. And our legislative power got so fed up with us. Actually, I must say that was happened because they tried to widen its maximum punishment of 21 years, or it's 15 years or 10 years, but we never used it. And nothing happened. Nothing happened in the court system when it came to the punishment. So then the legislative authorities decided that they were going to tell us exactly what should be the punishment in the law motives And in June 2001, they passed a law that actually was effective right away in July 2010, with significant more severe punishment for violent crimes. Not much different in the sentence framework, but it's a minimum penalty now of 3 years for, which let's say, a rape that ends with an intercourse, or for a victim that is unable to consent. But the difference is mostly how the courts are expected to rule. And there we have been given quite, what shall I say, they actually tell us if it's this kind of rape, it should be like that. It's not in the law, but it's in the motives. The normal level for rape, we have now been told, that includes penetration, vaginal or anal, should be 4 years. If it's aggravating circumstances, the normal level should be 5 years. And then we also given an example from a previous case. For instance, a 14 years, 11-month-old girl that was raped orally and vaginally for like 1.5 hours, that is 5 years. So if it's anything similar to that, it should be 5 years. Then it's 6 years. They gave an example. Brutal, humiliating rape with violence, held captured and harassed, that is 6 years. It lasted for 3 hours. 7 years. Unprotected vaginal penetration, 1 oral, 19-year-old girl, threats, violence, and also captured, 7 years. The Supreme Court has also given us what should be the remedy for non-economic loss in these cases. And a normal, let's say, normal rape that will now be like 4 years is 150,000 Norwegian kroner. 60,000 for gross negligent rape. That might be raised a little now lately. But that is how we get punished in the court for dragging our heels for so long. And I think it's really good because we also sense that when we have lay judges in these cases, and when we can tell them that this is actually the penalty that this person should get, it's also easier to get them to decide that, to decide the right punishment for these crimes. When it comes to gross negligent rape, we don't really have many cases of it, and this is more like a feeling I have than actually something that I can give you some numbers on. But I think that actually the victim there has even a bigger problem to be with her credibility in the court system when it comes to these cases. There was recently a case in Oslo where this 20-year-old girl had, there were 4 men that had sex with her over a period of, I don't know, a couple of hours, where she was so drunk and drugged, that was voluntary, that she doesn't have much of a record. She doesn't really remember what happened. These men were twice her age. They were also drinking. This was at a camping place. And they were all 4 acquitted because they were not negligent when it came to if she consented. And they all said that she was not really responding. And one of these men even said that afterwards he felt so sick that he went to the toilet and threw up. And they were all still acquitted. So that, and then of course nothing is done with that case afterwards, so that case is there. It is always difficult to know what's actually happened inside the courtroom and you only read the cases, so I must take all kind of precautions here, but still that tells me that it's still really, really hard in these cases to actually define what is the consent here and if the perpetrator is negligent. I think that was about the time that I was given here. And so I just want to thank you all for listening on this. And it has been really interesting all day. Thank you.